The auction hall on Station Corinth 7 smelled like old metal and broken dreams. Park Tae-ho sat in the back row, his worn jacket pulled tight against the cold air that leaked through the station's failing climate systems. He was 34 years old, tired, and almost out of money. Around him sat aliens of every shape and size. There were the tall, blue-skinned Valorians with their 4 arms. There were the small, furry Ketch, who always traveled in groups of 5 or more. There were the reptilian Scarith, their scales gleaming under the dim lights, their cold eyes watching everything. Tae-ho was the only human in the room. That was normal. Humans were still new to the galaxy. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 60 years ago. Most species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. To them, humans were like children who had just learned to walk. The auctioneer, a Valorian with a voice like grinding gears, called out lot after lot. Old ships, broken equipment, abandoned storage units. Most items sold for hundreds or thousands of credits. Tae-ho watched his competition buy everything useful. He did not have hundreds of credits. He barely had 50. He was a salvage dealer. He bought broken things, fixed them, and sold them for small profits. It was honest work, but it did not pay well. Last month, his best find had been a water recycler that he sold for 80 credits. The month before that, he found nothing at all. His mother, back on Earth, worried about him. She sent messages every week, asking when he would come home, when he would get a real job, when he would meet a nice girl, and settle down. Tae-ho loved his mother, but he could not go home. Not yet. Not as a failure. The auction continued. Lot after lot sold to buyers with deeper pockets. Tae-ho's hope grew smaller with each passing minute. Then the auctioneer announced lot 4,421. Abandoned hangar, the Valorian said, his voice bored. Located on the station's lower decks. Condemned section. Structural hazard warning. Contents unknown. Sold as is. No guarantees. No refunds. Opening bid. 50 credits. No one raised their hand. Tae-ho looked at his datapad. The listing showed almost nothing. Just a location code and a warning symbol. The lower decks of Corinth 7 were dangerous. The station was over 200 years old, and the lower sections had been abandoned for decades. Power was unreliable. Life support was questionable. Most salvage dealers avoided the area completely. 40 credits, the auctioneer said, lowering the price. Still, no one bid. 30 credits, 20 credits, 15 credits. Tae-ho's heart beat faster. He had exactly 47 credits in his account. If he bought this hangar, he would have almost nothing left for food or supplies. But if he did not buy something today, he would have nothing at all. 10 credits, the auctioneer said. Final offer. Anyone? Tae-ho raised his hand. The auctioneer looked at him with something like pity. Sold to the human. Lot 4,421. 10 credits. May the stars have mercy on you. A few aliens laughed. Tae-ho ignored them. He paid his 10 credits, received a rusty access key, and left the auction hall. The journey to the lower decks took 3 hours. Tae-ho had to take 4 different elevators, each older and more broken than the last. The final elevator shook so badly that he thought it might fall. The lights flickered. The air grew cold and stale. When he finally reached deck 47, he understood why no one else had bid. The corridor was dark. Emergency lights glowed red every 20 meters, casting long shadows on the metal walls. The floor was covered in dust and debris. Strange sounds echoed from distant passages, dripping water, creaking metal, things moving in the darkness. Tae-ho turned on his flashlight and checked his map. The hangar was another 500 meters ahead. He walked slowly, carefully, his boots crunching on broken glass and old rust. He passed abandoned shops, empty apartments, a medical clinic with its door hanging open. Everything had been left behind decades ago, frozen in time like a ghost town. Finally, he reached the hangar door. It was massive, at least 10 meters tall, and 20 meters wide. The metal was thick and heavy, designed to hold back the vacuum of space if the station's hull ever breached. Rust covered every surface. The control panel was dead. Tejo pulled out his plasma torch and began cutting. It took 2 hours to make a hole big enough to step through. When he finally pushed aside the cut metal and shined his light inside, his breath stopped. There was a ship, not a small shuttle or a cargo hauler, a warship. It filled most of the hangar, its dark hull stretching nearly 100 meters from nose to tail. The design was strange. Curved where most ships were angular. Smooth where most ships were rough. It looked alien, but not like any alien species Tejo had ever seen. He walked closer, his flashlight playing across the ancient hull. There were holes everywhere. Some were small, like bullet wounds. Others were massive, big enough to drive a ground car through. The metal was blackened in places, scarred by weapons fire that must have happened long ago. Tejo touched the hull. It was cold, dead. Whatever power had once flowed through this ship was long gone. He checked his scanner. The hull composition was unknown. The age was estimated at 8,000 years, give or take a few centuries. 8,000 years. That was older than human civilization, older than most of the species currently ruling the galaxy. This ship was ancient, a relic from a forgotten age, and it was worthless. Tejo walked around the wreck, cataloging damage. The engines were fused slag. The weapon systems had melted into unrecognizable lumps. The hull had more holes than solid metal. Even if he stripped every piece of salvageable material, he might make a few hundred credits. Barely enough to cover his expenses for the trip down here. He sat down on a piece of fallen debris and put his head in his hands. 10 credits. His last real money. Spent on a pile of ancient junk. Then his scanner beeped. Tejo looked at the screen. There was an energy signature. Faint, but definitely there. It was not coming from the ship. It was coming from below the ship. Below the hangar floor, he stood up slowly. His heart was beating fast again. But this time, it was not from hope. It was from something else. Something that felt almost like fear. The scanner showed the energy signature about 12 meters below the floor. It was weak but steady, like a heartbeat that had been beating for thousands of years. Something was down there, something that still had power after all this time. Tejo looked at the ancient warship. He looked at the floor beneath his feet. He thought about his mother's messages, asking him to come home. Then he went to get his digging equipment. He did not know it yet, but his life had just changed forever. The 10 credits he spent on this hangar would be the best investment any human had ever made. And the thing waiting beneath the floor would change the future of his entire species. But first, he had to dig. 3 weeks passed. Tejo worked every day from morning until his body could not move anymore. He sold what little salvage he could find from the ancient ship. A piece of unknown alloy here, a strange crystal there. Enough to buy food and basic supplies, enough to survive, but he did not dig. Not yet. He was afraid. He did not want to admit it, but the fear was there, sitting in his chest like a cold stone. Whatever was beneath the floor had been waiting for 8,000 years. Some things were buried for a reason. On the 4th day, a young woman appeared at his hangar door. Her name was Yoon Somi. She was 26 years old, with short black hair and sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. She was a technician, she said. She had heard about the human who bought the condemned hangar. She wanted to see if he needed help. Tejo did not trust her at first. In his experience, people who offered help usually wanted something in return. But Somi was persistent. She came back the next day, and the day after that. On the 3rd visit, she brought food. Real food, not the protein paste that Tejo had been eating. You look terrible, she said, handing him a container of rice and vegetables. When did you last sleep? I sleep, Tejo said. On the floor of a condemned hangar, next to an alien wreck that could collapse at any moment. That is not sleeping. That is waiting to die. Despite himself, Tejo laughed. It was the first time he had laughed in months. He hired her that afternoon. Somi was good at her job. She had cataloged the entire ship, and identified every piece of salvageable material. The total value was around 400 credits. Not much, but enough to keep them going for another month. She also found something else. "There is a marking here," she said one evening, pointing at a section of hull near the ship's rear. "I cannot read it, but it looks like writing." Teho looked closer. The marks were faded, almost invisible under layers of carbon scoring. But they were definitely deliberate. Symbols. A language. He ran them through his translation database. No match. He tried again with the expanded historical archives. Still no match. Whatever language this was, it had been forgotten long before any current species learned to write. "The firstborn," Somi said quietly. Teho looked at her. "The what?" "The firstborn. The ancient ones. The species that existed before all others. Everyone knows the stories." She traced the strange symbols with her finger. "They say the firstborn built great things. Ships that could cross galaxies, weapons that could destroy stars. Then they disappeared. No one knows why." "Those are just stories," Teho said. "Children's tales." "Maybe," Somi said. "But this ship is 8,000 years old. That is older than any known civilization. Someone built it. Someone powerful." That night, Teho could not sleep. He lay on his thin mattress, staring at the ceiling of the hangar, thinking about the energy signature beneath the floor. He thought about the firstborn. He thought about what might be waiting in the darkness below. The next morning, he started digging. The floor of the hangar was thick metal plating, designed to support heavy ships and equipment. It took 2 days just to cut through the first layer. Below that was rock. Dense, hard stone that had to be broken apart piece by piece. Somi helped when she could, but most of the work fell to Teho. He dug by hand when his equipment failed. He hauled rocks in buckets when his loader broke down. His muscles ached. His hands bled, but he did not stop. On the 9th day of digging, his shovel hit something that was not rock. "Somi," he called. "Come here." She climbed down into the hole, her flashlight cutting through the dust. Together, they brushed away the debris and revealed what lay beneath. It was a face. A metal face, humanoid but not human. The eyes were closed. The expression was calm, almost peaceful. The metal was black, darker than any shadow, and completely free of rust or decay. Teho's hands were shaking. "What is this?" "Keep digging," Somi whispered. They dug for 3 more days. What they uncovered was beyond anything Teho had imagined. There were 12 of them. 12 figures, each standing 3 meters tall, arranged in a perfect circle around a central pillar. They stood in some kind of stasis field, a bubble of blue energy that had somehow kept them preserved for thousands of years. Their armor was black and beautiful, covered in the same strange symbols as the ship above. Their bodies were not quite machine and not quite organic. They seemed to be both at once. "Sentinels," Somi breathed. "I read about these. The stories say the firstborn created guardians to protect their most valuable possessions. But no one has ever found one. They were supposed to be myths." Teho walked around the circle, examining each figure. They were all identical in size and shape, but each had small differences. A slightly different pattern on the armor, a different stance, small signs of individuality. He stopped in front of one sentinel. For some reason, this one drew his attention more than the others. He leaned closer, examining the closed eyes, the calm face. Then the eyes opened. Teho fell backward, scrambling away on his hands and feet. Somi screamed. The sentinel's eyes glowed with soft blue light, ancient and powerful and very, very aware. It spoke. The words were like nothing Teho had ever heard. They were not sound in the normal sense. They were deeper, felt in the bones rather than heard with the ears. His translator tried to parse the language and failed. Then the sentinel spoke again. And this time the words were in Galactic Standard. "You are not the makers." Teho could not move, could not speak, could barely breathe. The sentinel stepped forward, breaking through the stasis field like it was nothing. The blue energy flickered and died. The other 11 sentinels remained still, their eyes still closed. "You carry their silence in your cells," the sentinel said. Its voice was like stone grinding against stone. "Explain yourself, inheritor." "I do not understand," Teho managed to say. "I am just a salvage dealer. I bought this hangar at auction. I did not know you were here." The sentinel studied him. Teho felt something move through his body. A warmth that started in his chest and spread to every corner of his being. It was scanning him, reading him, looking at something deep inside that he did not know existed. "DNA signature confirmed," the sentinel said. "You are of the seeded worlds, one of the inheritors. The blood of the makers runs thin in you, but it is there." "What does that mean?" Somi asked. She had recovered from her fear and was now staring at the sentinel with fascination. The sentinel turned its glowing eyes toward her. "The makers seeded many worlds with life. They planted the seeds of intelligence in fertile soil and waited for it to grow. Your species is one of their children, one of many." "Humans," Teho said. "The firstborn created humans, not created, guided. The potential was already there. The makers simply helped it along. They did the same for 17 other species across this galaxy." The sentinel paused. "We were built to protect the children until they were ready. The ship above was our transport. This chamber was our place of waiting." Teho looked up at the ceiling, toward the ancient wreck above them. "The ship is destroyed. It has been dead for thousands of years. The ship is irrelevant. It was damaged in the final war, when the makers faced their enemies. We retreated here to wait for the children to find us." The sentinel looked at Teho with something that might have been respect. "You found us. What happens now?" Somi asked. The sentinel was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke words that would change everything. "The ship is yours by right of blood. We will serve. You are the inheritor. Park Teho of Earth. Whatever you command, we will do. Whatever threatens you, we will destroy. This is our purpose. This is why we were made." The other 11 sentinels opened their eyes. 12 pairs of glowing blue eyes looked at Teho. 12 ancient weapons, 12 impossible machines, 12 guardians from a forgotten age, and all of them were waiting for his orders. Teho looked at Somi. She looked back at him with wide eyes. "Well," she said slowly, "this is going to be interesting." That was the biggest understatement in human history. Word spread fast in the galaxy. There were no secrets. Not really. Someone always talked. Someone always saw something. And when that something was 12 ancient war machines awakening in a condemned hangar, the news traveled faster than light. Teho tried to keep quiet. He told no one, except Somi. He sealed the hangar doors. He stopped selling salvage. For 2 weeks, he lived in secret, trying to understand what he had found. The lead sentinel, the one who had awakened first, was patient with his questions. Teho started calling it harang, which meant one day in Old Korean. He chose this name because whenever he asked about the makers, or the past, or the purpose of the sentinels, the machine would say, "I will explain one day, when you are ready." Harang taught him many things. The makers had ruled this galaxy for 50,000 years. They had seeded life on hundreds of worlds, guiding evolution toward intelligence. Humans were one of their children. The Valorians were another. The Ketch, the small furry creatures, were a third. 17 species in total carried the blood of the makers. But not all species in the galaxy were children of the makers. Some had evolved on their own. Some had been created by other ancient powers. And some, like the Skarath, had been enemies of the makers in the final war. "The Skarath fought against your creators?" Teho asked one evening, sitting in front of Harang in the underground chamber. "They were weapons," Harang said, "designed by the enemies of the makers, created for war. When the enemies were defeated, the Skarath survived. They evolved. They forgot their original purpose. But deep in their blood, the hatred remains." Teho thought about this. The Skarath now ruled the hegemony. the most powerful military force in the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of species. They tolerated humans because humans were weak and posed no threat. "What happens if the Scarith find out about you?" he asked. "They will try to destroy us," Harang said simply. "They will fail." 2 days later, the hegemony found out. It happened because of a food merchant. A catch trader who supplied Teho with protein paste noticed that his human customer had stopped buying. She got curious. She snuck into the lower decks and saw the sentinels through a crack in the hangar door. She told her brother. Her brother told a friend. The friend worked for a hegemony intelligence officer. Within hours, a hegemony battle group was on its way to Station Corinth 7. Teho learned about this from the station administrator, a tired old Valorian who had run Corinth 7 for 30 years. The administrator came to the hangar personally, pounding on the sealed door. "Human," he shouted. "You need to leave. You need to leave now. The hegemony is coming." Teho opened the door. "How much time?" "Hours. Maybe less. They sent 3 dreadnoughts." 3. "Do you understand what that means? They could destroy this entire station." Teho looked back at the 12 sentinels standing in formation behind him. They had not moved since he sealed the hangar, but their eyes followed everything. "Thank you for the warning," he said to the administrator. "You should evacuate the station." The administrator stared at him like he was insane. "Evacuate? Do you know how many people live here? This is their home. Then tell them to stay away from the lower decks. Things are going to get dangerous." The administrator left, still sputtering warnings and threats. Teho sealed the door again. "You should leave," Somi said. She was sitting against the ancient ship, her face pale. "Take one of the escape pods. Go back to Earth. Forget any of this happened. I am not leaving." "Teho, they have dreadnoughts. Warships that could level cities. We cannot fight a war." Harang stepped forward. Its movements were smooth, almost graceful, despite its massive size. "The makers anticipated this," it said, "those who would take by force what belongs to the seeded. We were built for one purpose, to ensure humanity survives long enough to claim its inheritance." Teho looked at the ancient machine. He had spent 2 weeks with these sentinels. He had learned their history. He had heard their stories. But he still did not fully understand what they were capable of. "What inheritance?" he asked. Harang was silent for a moment. When it spoke, its voice was different. Softer. Almost sad. "Everything." Before Teho could ask what that meant, his communicator buzzed. A signal was coming through on the station's emergency channel. He activated it. A face appeared on the screen. Reptilian. Cold. The scales were dark green, almost black, and the eyes were yellow with vertical slits. This was a Skarath, a high-ranking one, based on the markings on its armor. "Human," the Skarath said. "I am Commander Reth Volos of the Hegemony 3rd Fleet. You have something that belongs to us." "I do not think so," Teho said. "I bought this hangar legally. Everything in it is mine." Volos showed his teeth. It might have been a smile. "Firstborn artifacts belong to the hegemony. This is the law. Surrender them now, and you will be compensated. Refuse, and you will be erased." Teho thought about his options. He could surrender. He could give up the sentinels, take whatever payment the hegemony offered, and go back to his old life. He could return to Earth, find a normal job, make his mother happy, but something had changed inside him during the past 2 weeks. He had learned that humans were not just random creatures who happened to develop intelligence. They were the children of the makers. They had been planted and protected and guided for thousands of years. They had an inheritance waiting for them, and Teho was not going to let the Skarath take it away. "No," he said. Volos's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "I said no. The sentinels are not hegemony property. They never were. They belong to humanity. They belong to all the seeded species. And I am not giving them to you." There was a long silence. When Volos spoke again, his voice was quiet. "Dangerous. You have made a mistake, human. A fatal mistake. My fleet will reach your position in 37 minutes. When we arrive, we will destroy your hangar, your precious artifacts, and everyone on that station who gets in our way. You had your chance. The signal cut off. Somi was crying. What have you done? He will kill everyone. Thousands of people will die. Because of you. Teho turned to Harang. Can you stop them? 3 dreadnoughts, 12 cruisers, 40 escort vessels. Can you stop all of them? Harang's eyes glowed brighter. We can. Without destroying the station. Without killing innocent people. We can try. Teho nodded slowly. Then do it. Protect this station. Protect the people here. But if possible, do not kill more than you have to. I do not want to start a war with mountains of bodies. Harang turned to the other sentinels. Something passed between them, some communication that Teho could not hear or see. The other 11 machines nodded as one. It will be done, Harang said. Stay here, stay safe, and watch. The sentinels moved toward the hangar door. They did not walk, they flowed, like shadows given form, like nightmares made real. The door opened, and 12 ancient weapons stepped out into the corridor. The last one stopped and looked back at Teho. One day, it said, I will explain everything, but first we have work to do. Then it was gone. Teho and Somi were alone in the hangar. Above them, the ancient ship loomed like a tombstone. Beyond the station's hull, a hegemony battle group was approaching, ready to destroy everything in its path. And somewhere in the dark corridors of Station Corinth 7, 12 guardians from a forgotten age were preparing to fight. Somi wiped her eyes and looked at Teho. Do you really think they can win? Teho did not answer. He did not know what to think anymore. All he could do was wait and hope that his 10-credit purchase had been worth it. The minutes passed like hours. The battle was about to begin. Commander Rethvolos watched Station Corinth 7 grow larger on his view screen. The station was old and ugly. A collection of metal boxes and tubes floating in the darkness of space. It was nothing special, just another trading post on the edge of hegemony territory. But somewhere inside that ugly station was something precious. Something powerful. And Volos intended to take it. All ships, prepare for assault, he ordered. Target the lower decks. I want that hangar opened. His crew obeyed instantly. The Scarith were efficient soldiers. They did not question orders. They did not hesitate. They simply did what they were told. The lead dreadnought, Volos's flagship, was called the Iron Fang. It was 500 meters long, armed with enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Behind it came 2 more dreadnoughts, each just as deadly. Then came the cruisers. Then the escorts. 55 warships in total. More than enough to handle one old station. Commander, his tactical officer said, we are detecting unusual energy readings from the station's lower decks. What kind of readings? Unknown. The signature does not match any known technology. Volos smiled. Good. That meant the artifacts were real. Firstborn technology was always strange. Always powerful. The hegemony already possessed a few pieces. A weapon here. A shield generator there. Each one had given them an advantage over their enemies. But 12 sentinels? That would change everything. Begin the assault, Volos ordered. The Iron Fang opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked toward the station, aimed at the lower sections. The station's old defense systems tried to respond, but they were weak and slow. Within seconds, the outer hull was breached. Then, something unexpected happened. A figure appeared on the station's outer hull. It was humanoid, but much larger than any human. Its armor was black as the void itself. It stood calmly, as plasma fire exploded around it, completely unharmed. What is that? Volos demanded. Before anyone could answer, the figure moved. It jumped, not toward the station, toward the Iron Fang. Volos watched in disbelief as the thing crossed the distance between the station and his ship in seconds. It was impossible. Nothing could move that fast in vacuum. Nothing could survive without a ship or a suit. The figure landed on the Iron Fang's hull. It did not bounce or slide. It simply landed, like gravity still applied. Then it started walking toward the bridge. All guns, target that thing, Volos screamed. Destroy it. The dreadnought's close-range weapons opened fire. Hundreds of shots per second, enough to cut through any armor known to the hegemony. The figure walked through the barrage like it was rain. The shots hit its black armor and simply stopped. They did not bounce off. They did not explode. They just stopped, absorbed by something that Volos could not understand. The figure reached an airlock. It did not try to open it. It simply punched through the metal like it was paper. Then, it stepped inside. Alarms blared across the ship. Emergency lights flashed red. Volos could hear weapons fire from the corridors, growing closer with each passing second. How many of these things are there? He demanded. His tactical officer was shaking. We are tracking 12 separate signatures, Commander. They have boarded all 3 dreadnoughts. 12. The same number as the sentinels in the reports. The ancient guardians of the firstborn. Volos finally understood. These were not artifacts to be collected. These were weapons. Active weapons. And they were coming for him. The bridge door exploded inward. The sentinel stepped through the smoke and debris. It was even more terrifying up close. 3 meters tall, its black armor covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow faintly. Its eyes were blue lights, calm and cold. Volos's guards opened fire. Their shots did nothing. The sentinel walked through them, not even bothering to dodge. It grabbed one guard and threw him aside like a toy. It crushed another's weapon in its hand. Within seconds, every guard was down. Volos drew his own pistol. His hands were shaking. He was Scareth. His people had fought the firstborn thousands of years ago. They had been created to destroy. But facing this thing, this ancient nightmare, he felt something he had never felt before. Fear. You cannot kill me, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. I am a hegemony commander. My death would mean war. The sentinel stopped in front of him. It studied him with those glowing eyes. The inheritor said to avoid killing when possible. It said. Its voice was like grinding stone. You are fortunate. He is merciful. Then it reached out and grabbed Volos by the throat. Not hard enough to kill, just hard enough to hold him in place. Your fleet is disabled, the sentinel said. Your weapons are offline. Your engines are dead. You are no longer a threat. Volos looked at the view screen behind the sentinel. What he saw made his blood run cold. The other ships of his fleet were drifting. Dark, silent, no weapons fire, no engine glow, nothing. In 11 minutes, the sentinels had disabled 55 warships, without destroying a single one. How? Volos whispered. We were built by the makers, the sentinel said. We were designed to fight enemies far more powerful than you. Your weapons are toys. Your ships are paper. We could destroy you all in seconds. It leaned closer. Its eyes burned into his. But we do not want destruction. We want peace. The inheritor wants peace. So you will live. You will return to your masters. You will tell them what happened here, and you will deliver a message. What message? Humanity is under our protection. All the seeded species are under our protection. Anyone who threatens them will face us. There will be no warning. There will be no negotiation. There will only be us. The sentinel released Volos. He fell to the floor, gasping for air. The inheritor's mercy has limits, the sentinel said. Do not test them again. Then it turned and walked out of the bridge, leaving Volos alone with his defeated crew and his shattered pride. On Station Corinth 7, Tejo watched the view screen in disbelief. The hegemony fleet was dark, disabled, harmless. Not a single ship destroyed. Not a single innocent person killed. The sentinels had done exactly what he asked. They had protected the station without starting a massacre. Somi was standing next to him, her mouth open. That is impossible, she whispered. No one defeats the hegemony. No one. The hangar door opened. Harang walked in, followed by the other 11 sentinels. They were completely undamaged. Not a scratch on their ancient armor. It is done, Harang said. The enemy fleet is disabled. The station is safe. Taeho did not know what to say. He had seen impossible things in the past few weeks. But this was beyond anything he could have imagined. You did not kill anyone, he finally said. I thought you would have to kill some of them. Killing is easy, Harang said. Mercy is harder. But you asked for mercy. So we gave it. The makers would have approved. Taeho sat down heavily. His legs were shaking. What happens now? The hegemony will send more ships. More soldiers. They will not stop until they have you. Yes, Harang agreed. They will send more. And when they do, humanity will no longer stand alone. What do you mean? Harang's eyes glowed brighter. Something in its posture changed, becoming almost gentle. The other seeded worlds are waking. The makers left guardians on every world where they planted the children. Earth, Corinth, 17 others. We have sent the signal. Our brothers and sisters are awakening. Taeho stared at the ancient machine. There are more of you? On Earth? On Earth. On the Valorian homeworld. On every world touched by the makers. You were never alone. Park Taeho. You were never abandoned. The makers protected you. Even in death. Somi grabbed Taeho's arm. This changes everything. If there are sentinels everywhere, if all the seeded species have guardians, then the hegemony cannot threaten anyone anymore. Taeho finished. The whole balance of power in the galaxy just shifted. Harang nodded slowly. The makers knew this day would come. They prepared for it. They left us instructions, knowledge, resources, everything the children would need to claim their inheritance. You keep saying that word, Taeho said. Inheritance. What does it mean? What exactly did the makers leave us? Harang was silent for a long moment. When it spoke, its voice was soft. Everything. They left you everything. Their technology, their knowledge, their history, and the path to their home galaxy, where the greatest gifts of all are waiting. Taeho looked at the ancient warship above him, the wreck that he had bought for 10 credits, the junk that had seemed worthless. That ship, he said slowly. It is not just a wreck, is it? No, Harang said. It is a key, a beacon. It contains the coordinates to the place where the makers came from. When humanity is ready, it will show you the way. The future stretched out before Taeho like a vast ocean, terrifying and beautiful and completely unknown. He had bought a hangar for 10 credits. He had found an army. And now he held the key to humanity's greatest adventure. The question was, what would he do with it? 6 months passed. The galaxy changed. On Earth, a sealed vault beneath the Gobi Desert had opened for the first time in 10,000 years. Inside were 20 sentinels, and enough firstborn technology to advance human science by centuries. The world governments fought about what to do with it for exactly 3 days. Then the sentinels made their position clear. The technology belonged to all of humanity, not to any single nation. On the Valorian homeworld, an ancient temple that had stood for millennia began to glow. 15 sentinels emerged from its depths, carrying gifts for their long-lost children. The Valorians wept when they learned the truth about their origins. On the Ketch homeworld, a mountain split open to reveal an army of sentinels, 10,000 strong. The small, furry creatures, long considered weak and unimportant, suddenly found themselves in possession of the largest sentinel force in the galaxy. And on Station Corinth 7, now renamed New Hangar by popular vote, representatives from 19 human-settled worlds gathered for the first time in history. Taeho stood at the entrance of the Great Hall, watching the delegates arrive. He wore simple clothes, nothing fancy. He had refused all offers of uniforms or titles. He was still a salvage dealer at heart, even if no one believed it anymore. Somi walked up beside him. She had changed in the past 6 months. She stood straighter now. Her eyes were sharper. She had become his chief advisor, his partner in everything. Sometimes, late at night, when they were alone, she was something more than that too. Are you ready? She asked. No, Taeho admitted. I am a man who bought a hangar for 10 credits. I am not qualified to lead anything. And yet here you are. Here I am. The Great Hall was packed. Humans from Earth and the colony worlds. Valorians with their 4 arms and blue skin. Ketch in their family groups. Even a few other seeded species had sent observers. Curious about what would happen next, at the front of the hall, the 12 sentinels from Taeho's hangar stood in formation. Harang was at the center, its ancient armor gleaming under the lights. Taeho walked to the podium. Every eye in the room turned to him. Every camera in the galaxy was watching. I am not a speaker, he began. I am not a leader. 6 months ago, I was broke and alone, buying junk in a condemned auction. If you had told me then that I would be standing here, I would have laughed. A few people in the audience smiled. Most looked uncertain, but here is what I have learned in the past 6 months. Humanity is special. Not because we are strong or smart or powerful. We are none of those things. We are newcomers to this galaxy. We are children compared to most other species. He paused, gathering his thoughts. What makes us special is that we keep going. When the universe tells us no, we ask why. When doors are closed, we find windows. When we fall, we get up. The makers saw this in us. They saw it in all the seeded species. That is why they left us guardians. Not because we needed protection, but because they knew we would eventually earn our inheritance. The room was silent. Even the sentinels seemed to be listening. The hegemony is gathering its forces. They fear us now, and fear makes people do dangerous things. There will be more battles, more hard choices, more days when it seems like we cannot win. Taeho looked at Harang. The ancient machine nodded slightly. But we will not face those days alone. The sentinels have shown us that. We have allies we never knew about. We have a history that stretches back thousands of years. We have an inheritance waiting for us. If we are brave enough to claim it. He took a deep breath. I do not know what the future holds. I cannot promise victory or peace or happiness. All I can promise is this. I will do my best. I will make mistakes. I will learn from them, and I will never, ever give up. The applause started slowly, then grew. Humans and aliens alike rose to their feet, clapping, cheering. Taeho felt his face grow warm. He was not comfortable with this much attention. After the ceremony, he escaped to a quiet observation deck. The stars stretched out before him, endless and beautiful. Somewhere out there was the Maker's home galaxy. Somewhere out there were answers to questions humanity had not even learned to ask yet. Somi found him there an hour later. You did well, she said, leaning against the window beside him. I meant every word. I am not qualified for this. Maybe that is why you are the right person. Someone who actually wanted power would be dangerous. You just want to do the right thing. Taeho laughed softly. The right thing. I am not even sure what that is anymore. Neither is anyone else. But you try. That matters. Quote, they stood in silence for a while, watching the stars. Do you ever regret it? Somi asked. Opening that floor? Awakening the sentinels? Taeho thought about the question seriously. The past 6 months had been the hardest of his life. He had faced death. He had made enemies of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. He had become responsible for the future of his entire species, but he had also found something he never expected. Purpose. Belonging. Love. Not for a second, he said. Heavy footsteps approached from behind. Harang walked up to stand beside them. The ancient sentinel had been quiet for weeks, speaking only when necessary, observing everything. You have done well, inheritor, Harang said. The makers would be proud. Fine, well, see. And climb. I still do not understand why they chose humans, Taeho said. We are so small, so young, so flawed. That is exactly why they chose you, Harang said. The makers were old when they seeded your world. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched species grow powerful and then destroy themselves with that power. They wanted something different. What did they want? Hope. Harang's eyes glowed softly. They wanted species who would never stop hoping, never stop trying, never stop reaching for the stars. No matter how many times they failed, humans have that quality. You fail constantly, you make terrible mistakes, and then you get up and try again. Somi smiled. That is the nicest insult I have ever heard. It is not an insult, Harang said. It is the highest praise. The galaxy is full of species who gave up, who stopped dreaming, who accepted their place and never questioned it. Humans do not do that. You see a condemned hangar, and you buy it for 10 credits, just to see what happens. Teho laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and genuine. That is the most human thing you have ever said, he told Harang. I have been studying, the sentinel replied. Your species is endlessly fascinating. I look forward to the next 1,000 years. The three of them stood together, watching the stars. An ancient guardian, a salvage dealer, and a technician. An unlikely family, brought together by chance and choice. Far away, the hegemony was preparing for war. Across the galaxy, sentinels were awakening, ready to defend their charges. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, the Maker's home waited to be found. The future was uncertain, dangerous, terrifying, but also full of possibility. Teho remembered his mother's messages, all those months ago. When will you come home? When will you get a real job? When will you settle down? He had never answered those questions. Now he knew he never would. Because home was not a place. Home was a purpose. And he had finally found his. One day, he said to Harang, you promised to explain everything. The Makers. The final war. What really happened to them? Harang was silent for a long moment. One day, the sentinel finally agreed. When you are ready, when all of humanity is ready, there is much you do not yet understand. Much that will change how you see the universe. I can wait, Teho said. We have time. Yes, Harang said. You do. That is the greatest gift the Makers gave you. Time. And the courage to use it well. The stars continued to shine. The station continued to orbit. And humanity continued to dream. It was enough. For now, it was enough. But one day, Teho knew, it would be time to reach for something more. To follow the ancient ship's coordinates. To find the Maker's home. To claim the full inheritance that had been waiting for them since before humans learned to walk. One day, but not today. Today, he would stand with his friends, watch the stars, and be grateful for a 10-credit hangar that changed everything. The universe was waiting, and humanity was finally ready to answer.